for July 18th, 2023. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll do a roll call, starting with John Greenan. Here.
Ron Pappy here.
Lori G.
John Eichman.
Richard Campbell.
Ed Miyoshi.
Sarah Bledsoe.
Thank you. Upcoming meeting dates are August 15th, 2023, and September 19th, 2023. We do have minutes for the last meeting held on June 20th, 2023, if everyone's had a chance to review those. Some have not had a chance to review it yet, so we'll hold those over to the next meeting and approve them then. The first item on the agenda tonight is Rising Sky Housing.
Good evening, Joseph Berger, Berger Engineering for the applicant. I've been here before. We're proposing a 9,000 square foot contractor's building, over 2 acres on Donovan Drive. On the screen here, parking for the commercial vehicles will be in the back. Screening with just the employee parking in the front. Service with the subsurface sewage disposal system in the front and a well. Stormwater will be collected and drained into an infiltration system in the front, which will have an overflow connection into the town system on Donovan Drive. We're proposing a retaining wall to connect the road between our site and the daycare center, which will have a vinyl fence on top. I think I provided some pictures for you of the vinyl fence and the wall, which will be, this is the fence we're going to buy from Hudson Valley Vinyl Fencing. And this is the wall we're going to be buying from Red Rock. So these are the actual materials we'll be using. The fence will act as both a visual screen and a sound barrier from the trucks, which will be in the back. The trucks will pretty much leave in the morning, come back late at night, so there won't be very much traffic during the day when the daycare center is, other than the occasional trucks that come and go. But most often the contractors will be gone during the day. But recognizing that there'll be some backup sounds and stuff, we did an analysis to show that we're okay with the town code, but recognizing that you want to do better than that, we made sure there was the vinyl fence there. Also, there was a question about could we do something to beautify the wall and fence between our property and the daycare. I gave you a picture of the retaining wall where some shrubs, we could certainly put shrubs or a hedgerow at the base between our wall and the property line. There's not enough room for trees, nor would I want to do them on the base of the retaining wall, but we could certainly, as the picture shows, beautify it with some shrubs. And we could add that to the plan. That's pretty much it. The lighting in the back is pretty much for when it's being used, so it'll be on motion detectors. So when there's nobody there, once the contractors leave at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, lights go away, so it'll go dark. And they're all dark sky compliant. We met the lighting at the property line, but more importantly, they won't be shining there all the time. So once no one's there, they shut off.
Was the lighting delineated on the plan, the choice of lighting?
Yes, we have the lighting on there. From the company is going to provide it with the lighting schedule from them with their lamps.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask, do you have an anticipated time of construction from, let's just say, how long it would take from when you start to when you finish?
In these environment, as we all know, it's going to be getting materials to build. We'd love to see it in 6 months, but more likely it's a year by the time you get all the things in there. And it's already July, so more likely than not, we're going to be doing clearing this fall, because you want to clear during the season. Start construction, if we get lucky, we'll get the footing in the ground and get that going, and then building over the winter. But more likely than not, it'll be done by next spring to summer. I would like to see it go faster. My client would like to, but in reality, it's probably a year.
Okay.
Can you remind us, what's the total height of the wall and the fence? together?
Well, the fence is 6 feet, the wall varies from 4 to 6, I believe,
Okay,
So it will go from 10 to 12 feet?
somewhere in there, yes.
okay.
And just for the board's information, last year pursuant to local law 7 of 2022, the town board amended its ordinance so that fences in industrial zones can go up to 12 feet.
12 feet total.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. One of the things we wondered about is, so does the fence end just before the very front of the property? And is there a way to create a barrier from between, at that very front portion from the daycare center?
We could extend it right up to the property line if you want. No problem.
Got it.
It's pretty close to it anyway. We did just for grading purposes, but no problem where I could extend the fence straight up, go past the wall, start there because it's where the grading is. But there's no reason I can't extend the fence. As it did in the back, we extended the fence even further in the back to block off the sound. I could do the same in the front.
Excellent.
Are you thinking about increasing the height or just extending the length of it?
Extending the length.
You want so that nobody cuts through. Yeah, we don't want that either, so we could extend it right up.
So Lori, just so you understand, on the cul-de-sac, the driveway entrance is here, and then the property of daycare starts here. And it's my understanding from the daycare, from a site visit we did out there, that there is a bus that drops kids off in that cul-de-sac. Now, they may have to change that. And I think the reason they drop them in the cul-de-sac rather than at the driveway, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong because he was with me, is that they can see the bus from the building when they drop off at the cul-de-sac, and it's harder to see down at the driveway. So they had been having them come, I guess because there's nobody on that cul-de-sac currently, and drop the kids there, and then they walk onto the site that way, apparently. So there's a little bit of concern that there could be some conflict there.
Yeah.
So it may be that the daycare needs to modify and have them drop at the driveway, just to make sure that that conflict doesn't exist. But we wanted to make sure that the fence went all the way down to really prevent any traveling from that property into the adjacent contractor's yard.
So question for the daycare, are the children received by somebody there?
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
somebody literally taking them from the bus door
Yes.
to where they need to go?
They're very on, I mean, from the times that we've been out there, very on top of things. We were out there just, out there observing, kind of looking at stuff, and somebody was out immediately asking who we were, what we were doing. Pretty much immediately spotted us the second we arrived.
But
So-
there's no like platform or anything so it's just they self-designated this
Correct.
area where children will be dropped in?
Correct, and I mean, I think there hasn't been a lot of stuff going on back there, in all
Sure.
honesty, so they've been walking on that cul-de-sac with the children down the street and that kind of stuff, so this is an industrial zone, so we have to remember that, but I'm just saying that clearly, just because of the way they've been operating, in part because they've had the opportunity to operate that way, they've had kind of the run of
Yeah.
cul-de-sac.
So there might have to be some,
There might have to be some,
give and
things
take
that change.
as a neighbor, develops that property, so they'd have to kind of alter some of their plans.
Correct. So we're just trying to do the basic things that we can to make sure that
Safety.
we do it as safe as possible and with as little impact on to the daycare, but we also understanding that it is an industrial zone and there is an as-of-right ability to have a contractor's
Sure.
yard.
Michelle, do we need to consider maybe posting like a children at play sign or something like that, just to give a heads up as they enter the road? or
That
something?
actually would not be a bad idea at all.
Absolutely.
That's something we talked to the highway department about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
We can put that into, the resolution, so we're reminded to do
Sure.
that when we
Yeah.
get to that point.
Yeah, awesome.
Understood.
And then, just so you know, it's very quiet there right now because it's wooded, right? So and we all know trucks can be a little bit noisy. The vinyl fence will help attenuate some of that noise. But there may be some noise. There are classrooms that face the wall, and there's little fenced-in areas. I think they're for the smaller children. So they go out into the little fenced-in play area. It's very tiny, but they're there, and then it's, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 feet to
Something like that.
the fence line. So we were talking, I don't know exactly what the daycare center would prefer, if they just want a straight wall there, or if they would rather have it softened by having some shrubbery to look at, I'm not sure. I know they remarked to me that they had concerns for security with all the woods because they couldn't see into the woods, so maybe they may prefer to have just the fence, I don't know. But I would like maybe to have some flexibility with deciding what goes on that fence line. It may depend on what it looks like and how it goes in, but the other thing I'm concerned about, and this will have to be a pre-construction thing, is during the construction, it's very close. So we'll have to figure out how to keep it fenced off during construction.
Well, we're planning on putting a construction fence all around our zone. First
Chain
item.
link, like a chain
No,
link?
the orange fence.
The orange fence, I mean, I don't know that that would keep it,
Like dust and things like that.
yeah, the
Is that-
kid, that's the thing I'm worried about. But that'll have to be talked about during the pre-construction meeting, but there may have to be something
Yeah.
that happens there.
Oh,
because
first item of work, we can put the wall and the fence up.
Yeah, I think that might be the best thing to do.
That could be our first item
Using
of
it.
work.
Yeah.
I mean, as we clear the trees, we'll put the orange up because that's the easiest way to delineate. And then as we start constructing the wall and the fence, the wall needs to go up first anyway in order to
Yeah.
delineate and start the grading.
There'll probably be silt fence, I would think,
And,
there,
oh,
too.
yeah, and, you know, there'll be silt fence, but the orange fence is a little bit more for,
Visible.
more visible than
Yeah.
the silt fence where you trip over as you walk by, and it's a little taller too. But our first item of work will be the wall, and then we can certainly put the fence right on top of it.
So I just wanted to, that's all I just wanted to say. And I mean, obviously, there's a, it's an existing condition that we have to deal with.
Absolutely.
Okay. Other questions or comments by board members?
I do have a follow-up question to the fence. So what, I'm looking at this on my laptop, but, so this, on the right-hand side, the straight line is the proposed stockade fence and wall. Is that
The
accurate?
vinyl fence, yes.
Okay. So I'm seeing, as it enters the cul-de-sac, it's quite close to the road, but on the back of the lot, it almost stops at where the playground is.
Well, it stops far enough back up there as it goes up into the hill because then it's steep.
Okay, so it's the elevation
And
changes.
not only the elevation, I actually extended it a little further than the elevation so that no sound would creep around.
Understood.
So.
Thank you.
The security, I had it probably 10 feet shorter that's what you needed for security purposes because of the grade.
Yeah.
Then we pushed it up a little bit so it'll grade in there, just so that, just to help the sounds, so there's no bouncing and reverberation of the sound.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, from CPL's end of things, Kristen had sent out a letter today. Most of the prior comments were addressed. There are some minor stormwater design comments, which I'm sure he'll work out with Joe's office. The only other thing was the monument sign is proposed to be within the town right-of-way. So I don't know if that requires town board or just highway approval or,
That would require a license agreement
okay.
to keep that in place. Or you could just move it back onto your own property.
Or we can move it back. I wasn't sure what the procedure
If you
was.
just move it back onto your own property, you don't need.
That would be, the best thing because
Okay.
I think,
Do you
We can
have
move it
enough
back.
room for it to be moved
Isn't-
back? Because I know you've got your,
isn't there stormwater facilities right there?
Yeah, but we could probably move it in there somewhere.
I mean, that would be, the best thing because then the highway doesn't have to worry about plowing, the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
And plus, your client, the probably, the snow will get, like piled up against the sign and.
Not a problem. We can move that back.
or you could, I don't know if you have to have a monument sign, you could also maybe, because you're going to have a gate across the front, maybe put the
Yeah.
sign on the gate.
Yeah, we could do that.
I mean, I don't know, that's just another option. You
We can do, we'll either
Up to
do one
you.
or the other. We'll move the sign back.
That's good.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments by board members or professionals?
Nope. You could just make some of those changes, and then I think
Yep.
we can have you ready for a decision at the next meeting, like a resolution at the next
That's
meeting.
fine.
in the NAGDAC.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is Formicola subdivision.
Thank you.
Brian Stacosa, Dane Stacosa, Engineering. We were in front of the board last month. This is a two-lot split on Route 376, right next to the ball fields and Town Hall. Have an existing house on just over 3 acres. The proposal is to subdivide it into one new residential lot, one new driveway access onto 376. And as we discussed at the last meeting, being sensitive to the ballparks behind us, we show a 30-foot restricted easement along the entire rear portion of the property, just to ensure that that vegetative buffer remains, and it's not clear-cut, provides buffer between the ball fields and obviously any future homeowner there. The real update we have is we've been out there with the Board of Health. We've done soil tests. Soil tests came back good. We're in a gravelly loam out on site. We've reached out to DOT. We hopefully will have a meeting on site toward the end of next week just to discuss the new driveway entrance for the proposed house. Other than that, it's just a simple two-lot subdivision.
Excellent. Questions by board members or comments? I think we talked a little bit about a possible easement for a potential sidewalk, future sidewalk. Is that also part of the plan?
Yeah, what we wanted to do is we wanted to get our Board of Health in line. Soil test came back that we can provide that access easement across the front of the parcel so that we would be able to entertain that.
So this is going to be a well and a septic? You're not going to connect to the town water or sewage?
Water's not in that stretch of the roadway there.
Questions or comments by our professionals?
Yeah, I had something. Again, a majority of Christian's prior comments were addressed. When I did look at the plans today, just so I could understand them before I came here tonight, in regards to the 30-foot buffer strip, what I've seen done in some of my other towns is, I see that, Brian, you're proposing some monuments. So what I recommend is that as a condition of approval, you have the monuments installed before the maps are signed. This way, when somebody buys the lot, they're there. And I could also have Christian send like a detail, but we also use in some other towns where they put a little marker on the top of the monument that, I don't know, says preservation area or something. Now, the owners will have, the covenant and restrictions in their deed when they buy it. But, I have had like cases where we do this, person buys the lot for whatever reason, they clear cut it, and then, what do you do after the fact? So at least if the monuments are there and probably spaced every 100 feet, maybe 150 feet instead of, on either end, maybe one in between, spaced a little more often with a little marker on the top, it'd be kind of hard to miss that you shouldn't be in there doing anything. So I'll mention that, to Christian, as long as the board is okay with that. That's something that you could incorporate in your approval
Sounds like
whenever that comes.
an excellent, easy solution
Yeah,
to that.
and this way it's done before somebody buys the lot, it's there,
Right.
It's marked, and then hopefully that takes care of it.
Great. Thank you.
Simple enough.
I think I mentioned this last time, but I was hoping that we could preserve the strip plan for a potential future sidewalk in the event that we decide we want a sidewalk, and because the other side of the road is almost impossible to put a sidewalk on, so if there would ever be a sidewalk from Town Hall into the center of the Hopewell Hamlet, it would need to be along that stretch. And I do think there's, in most of the site, there's additional right-of-way, there's excess right-of-way, but there are also utility poles, but I just want to make sure that we preserve that right to have a sidewalk along that frontage if we need it in the future.
Got it. And that's no problem, right?
So that would be a condition.
Yep. Okay. Is there any action we need to take this evening?
You have to open the public hearing.
Sorry about that. I have it down as discussion.
Yeah, I think you advertised last time.
I apologize. Great, so we're all set.
We're all set.
Could I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public meeting's open. Public hearing. Any members of the public here to speak for or against the project? If not, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor,
And
signify by...
before you vote on that, Brian, would you agree to extend any sort of voting deadline? Because I think the September meeting falls outside of the 62 days. Can you extend it to the October meeting?
That's fine.
Okay. Because we have a 62-day shot clock that we'd have to otherwise,
For decision.
right, issue a decision. So Brian just said October was okay.
Okay, got it. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Very good.
All right, guys, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So the next item is you again, Brian, Stormville Square. We do need to declare intent to be lead agency on this project. May I have a motion to that extent?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
So the real update with this one is, we had a discussion last meeting about, the revisions that we wanted to make going from one larger building to a two-story, same square footage, just 18 and 18, 36,000 total. We refined the grading slightly around the building. We tightened up the curb lines so we could run, a tractor trailer through it. I think for whatever reason we printed, I don't know if the tractor trailer templates were on there, but for whatever reason, you can run a WB-40 through the site. Regardless of that, we started playing around with grading, putting spot elevations on, adjusting drainage. From a SWIP standpoint, we had a lot of time and effort into the original SWIP that was approved that supported the bigger building footprint and the larger parking area. And speaking to the applicant, we're just going to retain what we have as far as drainage and that approval, and we're just going to modify our basins to fit into that older system, which is actually oversized for our development action. In doing that too, we introduced back the concepts that we discussed at the last approval, which was the landscaping buffer along the residential portion between our property to the south and to the east. Having that same evergreen pattern tightly stacked along the eastern side. We're going to have that fence up top in case there's any balls that roll down, things like that. And then continue that tree line around the top where it meets into our retaining walls. Retaining wall locations remain in the same spots as the original approved plan. We've actually lessened them slightly because of that footprint, again, being pushed in and tightened around the building. Other than that, DOT, we're in the process of actually closing out the permit at the entrance. We're working on the final as-built for the improvements that were done for the new commercial entrance and the closing of the old entrance where the existing retail is up front. Other than that, we were hoping to take this to the next level, which was the scheduling of a public hearing. And we are going to be submitting to the ARB with our updated renderings, which is just a variation of same concept, same colors. It's just the two-story presentation. That's it.
So you have been before the ARB?
We haven't been in front of the ARB yet. We were planning to be in front of the ARB.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So we're working on the elevations, tightening them up slightly just to make the deadline.
So you're shooting for August, or you're shooting for
Yes.
September? Okay.
And have you been before our fire advisory board?
I think the fire advisory board did review the application. And they had some comments that came back. We can go through them if you'd like. You guys want to go through?
We did have a couple of comments as far as access to the building. It's, from what we can understand, there's access from the back into the second floor and from the front into the first floor, is that correct?
That's correct. And on the sides, what we're going to do is we have a couple of retaining walls around, let's say, the north and the southern side. The retaining walls will be offset from the building to like 6 to 8 feet, so you have a pretty large corridor as the grading goes up the hill, so you'll have access to the back of the building, and there'll be a central hallway in the back, and part of our life safety plan will have access points and dimensions on how you access the building from the back and the sides.
We're not privy to the internal drawings, so is there internal staircases between floors?
There will be.
There is.
Yes.
Okay.
Staircase or elevator?
I think that was the only major question we had. I don't remember all the details.
There's staircases, Brian, or there are elevators?
I think there was a staircase. I don't think we had to do the elevator in this because we had access from the back, from the
Oh, so
second.
the second floor, so people can...
that great?
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So there'd be, I think we have staircases on the northern and southern side with access in the front and the rear.
Okay. Other questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from our professionals?
Brian, if I remember correctly, the new retaining walls are shorter because of the difference with the gradings?
Yeah, we substantially saved by taking the building from that larger footprint and then compressing it and then going up. Substantial wall reduction. Remember, the old version had the walls, let's say along the residential portion on the south, and it wrapped around up top. I think we had close to a 14, 15-foot wall in the back. That's been removed in its entirety, and now it's just graded as you see on site. What you see on site now is roughly where the final grade's going to be of the building and also the hillside. There could be a little bit of shaving just to make that turn, let's say going from north to west around the upper part of the building. There could be some grading in there, but what you see out on site is pretty close to where final's going to be.
Just one other question. From the front of the building, the lower floor, what's the height of the building? Top?
I think we were 23 feet, if I remember correctly.
Thank you.
And do I recall are you bringing in a lot of fill on this project?
This is a zero.
Okay.
Well, that was one comment that I was going to make, Mr. Chairman. So, Brian, when I looked at the plan today, on one of the sheets, you have a cut and fill calc. And unless I'm reading it wrong, I thought it said 10,000 cubic yards of fill that had to be brought in. I mean, maybe it's just not the way, maybe I was reading the table wrong, but
Yeah, that might have been an old table.
I think you should, I mean, if it's a balanced site, that's like great.
Yeah. So what we did is, when we did the original.
Just look at that table, because it was confusing. It was either 10,000 to bring in, which I don't think so, because you're making that cut in the back.
So I think what it may be is because we modeled this in different tins, different surfaces, so that may have been an older tin that wasn't updated in that table, because we've adjusted
All
the
right,
grades.
just double check that, because, I mean, if it's a lot of fill going out, which,
Zero.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because what we did is we pushed a lot of fill into the front, specifically where we have that approved stormwater area. We pushed a lot of fill there to kind of level the site down. And we worked with the applicant, and we went over the grading several times, so I think we were under 300 yards.
All right, so just go double check that table on there, because that was confusing.
Absolutely.
Other than that, Christian, most of his comments were addressed. There's some minor, like stragglers, which I'm sure he'll work out with Brian.
So one of the comments I have is that I think the applicant had gone and clear-cut most of the site, and there's a slope right now, and there's just a little concern that there could be some erosion. So I know they're showing some plantings here. We just need to make sure that, and I'll go back out there and look with the latest plan, make sure that the plantings will handle any of the erosion or any, and there really should be, they should really revegetate some of the slope that was clear-cut. So I'll go back and make sure that we may want some additional plantings down. And then also, along the property line with the residential, I don't know how much room you have, but you might be better served just staggering it a little, like in and out, in and out, in and out, just so it's not one straight line.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Yeah, that might be, I don't know how much room you've got, but.
Where the retaining wall is, it's probably pretty tight, but as we move past the building there, east and west, we have the ability to do that.
And then the public hearing that you would like to schedule would also be the public hearing for we need the elevations, basically, at the next meeting, so bring them.
Yep.
And then if it turns out that you do need cut and fill over the amount, you would have to advertise for that special permit as well. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind if that.
100% confident we don't need it.
Okay.
The applicant drilled that into my head.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? If not, I'll accept a motion to schedule a public hearing for the next meeting, Brian,
Yes, sir.
which is August 15th.
Does that get us past the ARB?
We will.
When is the next ARB? It's usually the first week, right, in the first week of the, yeah. So it should be after.
It should be okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so may I have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Brian, we'll see you at
Thank
the
you,
next
guys.
meeting.
Appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is JFE Associates.
Good evening, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Michael Espy, how you all been? This is the property that has the existing, let's call it a small dome, that exists, East Fishkill Golf Center. It's next to the property that effectively all of it is owned by the fire company. So what exists there now is basically the small dome and the range, golf range. And the Huskies, I guess let me speak to that quick. The Huskies is a girls softball travel organization. They've been implementing or using the site, the enclosed area, for, I would say, at least 10 years. They have certainly a need, because things are growing and so forth, to provide some additional space for practice areas and so forth. So it kind of made sense, with this being their main hub site for practicing and things such as that, that the front of the site be used for the purposes of installing a couple ball fields. So with that, there's a couple things. Number one is, this is not something where we're looking to set up big tournaments and that kind of a thing. That's not proposed here. Hopefully you can see it on the drawing there. 3 fields, one is smaller for juniors, and there's 2 standard size ones. There's no fencing. We're not proposing dugouts, backstops, things like that. These are just in the field etched areas that can be used by the players for the purposes of practice. These are, in this particular zoning area, it's required to have a 100-foot setback for any structures. So you'll see that the line of the larger fields falls along that 100-foot mark. So just per se, you can understand even that, it'll be far off the road, okay? The 2 bigger fields will be hitting toward the golf range. The smaller one will be in the back corner and batting toward 52, but again, those are the juniors, and they don't hit them as far as the big girls. So that's effectively the proposal. I do have a note on there regarding area of disturbance and all this. The field right now is a big field, grass hay field. There's a couple of golf sticks, just I guess for promotional purposes, to bring people into the site. Those would obviously go. The area would be cut, and then these are what they call fully skinned fields, which means that when the girls play the infield, first to second to third to home, that square in that area, it's just clay, it's all dirt. There's not a grass infield. If anybody's familiar with fields 2 and 3 over at the rec, it's the same kind of thing. So in terms of, I have a note there that says area of disturbance. That's really not, it's the area of concentration of where the work we're doing. There's not really going to be a whole lot of disturbance with the site other than those areas. And again, the area is pretty flat. So in terms of grading and pushing dirt around, we don't anticipate much any of that. So unfortunately, my client was supposed to be here and maybe could have filled you in a little more on their organization, but he's not here. So hopefully I didn't do him any disservice, but it's a pretty straightforward proposal.
So nothing, Mike, is going to be eradicated. It's just strictly, you're going to be putting the fields down on that grassy area, no changes outside that, like not impinging on parking, nothing?
No, you know, my daughter was involved with this organization for a while and was practicing at that facility. The parking is very underutilized there.
Yes.
I'm not particularly sure what, you know, obviously there must have been a parking requirement back in the day that required all that parking, but the concern that would be that now they have additional kids and players playing, that in fact there'd be more traffic and so forth, but at the end of the day, it's really indoor versus outdoor practice. I mean, so when they're, you know, summer months, well, not to say there's nothing going on inside the dome, you know, as long as weather's decent, they prefer to be outside.
You said this will be 100 feet off of the 52, so there's no chance of any stray balls going
Right.
out there.
Yeah, and again, they've been oriented, at least the two larger fields, to go in. And Field 3 is where the juniors and seniors play over in town. That's the field behind the basketball hoops, right there. So once in a while, a ball will stray out and hit a ball or hit a car that's literally facing and parked in that basketball area, but it's not 100 feet. So in terms of the ball even getting fouled off and kicking back behind him in the 52, I don't see that being an issue here, so.
Mike, what about, and again, I'm just not as familiar with the site, where these fields are going to have, I'll call it the ball travel zone, like, is there any parking? Is there any travel way to get to the dome? Is there anything we need to worry about there? Because you said you're not putting any nets up or anything.
Yeah, you have the main dome facility, then you have the parking between there and 52, and then you'd be on the field. So any pedestrian traffic and so forth would not be venturing out toward the main road. It'd all be between the dome, across the parking lot to the fields. And those parking lots, they're not paved, they're just stone.
So what I'm asking is, though, is there a chance that there's going to be balls landing on cars that we need to worry about? Or, because you said you're not facing them towards 52, you're facing them towards the back of the property where people are parking and where the dome is. Right.
So if you can kind of tell there, the field all the way to the bottom, which would be the east, wherever anything hit there, those are where the batting cages are. The bottom field. So shouldn't be anything there. The next one up, let's call it field 2 in the middle. There is a corner there on the left side there that if you hit one pretty decent, there may be the possibility of hitting a car. I guess most people do what most people do over here is they just don't park there.
Okay.
Once a car or something gets hit. But
And is there any chance of impacting any residences nearby?
no, we have the let's call it the abandoned restaurant, Goodfellas, to the left.
Okay.
So that's there, and then the fire district is on the right, but the fire district's a pretty good distance away in terms of the buildings and access and all that good stuff.
Do you anticipate these fields being used all at once or at all different times?
Yeah, I could see them being used all at once. You know, what happens now is that a group comes in, let's say 2 or 3 teams, and they come into the dome, and then what they do is they run generally, all right, practice drills. So you're at this station, and you're at that station, and you kind of filter, you know, let's say call it 3 teams around. The idea would be that, you know, you could get some real use and advantage by coming out here and using all these 3 fields at once in a kind of a real-time, real situation. It's while the dome has been great for them, it is a little tight.
A follow-up question to that, do you have any idea how many additional cars could be parking or traveling in that area at the time that all 3 fields would be used?
In terms of a hard number, I mean, I would say each team would have at least 12, right? So you're talking 12, 24, 36, right? And then the coaches, so you're probably talking the possibility of another 40, 50 cars. Again, that's not, and a lot of it is drop off and come back, and there's some shared driving because a lot of these kids come down from down in Westchester and other areas, so there's not individual driving all the time. But again, I think that with the amount of parking that we have there, it's, you could fill these fields and as well as do your work in the dome, and you would still have enough parking on site based upon the physical size of the parking area that you have there. I don't see that being the case, but, and again, one thing is important here. At one point, we were talking this a few years ago, and they were talking about tournaments and things like that. That's not going to happen. There was also talk about, with that, maybe getting rid of the drainage and putting additional fields back there. That's all pie in the sky. That's not going to happen here.
So there wouldn't be like opposing teams coming to play? Like, because then that would really pick up the parking. So if you had 3 fields going with, opposing teams, that would put the parking,
You make a good point.
yeah.
I wish the owner was
Sorry.
here. I wish the owner was here so he could.
Well, plus
so
the driving
I can't say that's
range,
not going to
batting
happen.
And then the existing business that's there, so I guess we would have to take a look at, do you have any idea? I know it's not striped, there's nothing
Right.
there, and I know it's gravel, but is there any parking space count that we have to go by?
Well, I mean, I wanted to hear first how they were planning to use the field before I could even make a determination. So I think we need to just look a little bit at the parking, and then maybe we put some use restrictions on if we feel like there could be an issue. We can limit, who can be there, or how they can use it if we need to. I don't know how many existing spaces are out there. Do you have a count at all, Michael?
Yeah, well, there is an approved site plan on file with this. We didn't do the original, we came in for a revision, so, we do somewhere, there is a hard count on this rather than going out and pulling tapes and so forth, so I think.
Are they
maybe it's-
striped though out there, or are they just?
No, it's
all
gravel.
open, right? Yeah, that's
No,
what I
it's
thought.
gravel.
Like timber railroad beams and stuff,
Yeah.
eliminating things, stuff. So what we could do between now and maybe the next time to provide answers to some of these questions, we can get that parking amount down and then get the clarification from the owner of the Huskies is not necessarily the same person that owns the property, just so it's clear.
So the only other thing I guess I would be concerned about at that point, if you have 3 fields going, everybody playing, no fencing, no nothing, there's got to be some kind of protective area where people, you're going to have the teams that are off the field, there's got to be some kind of protective areas where people are going to gather, because then it would just be kind of somewhat chaotic, I would say, or unsafe.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I don't know how far, I mean, I Googled it, but I don't know how far girls at the different age groups can hit the ball.
Yeah.
But certainly along the driveway, it concerns me a little bit, like if there could be a foul ball from the field right up against the drive, that would go right into the driveway. So that, I think there would need to be some sort of netting
And the
along
parking
there.
lot.
And then I don't know what the anticipated distance would be for someone, if they could head it all the way out to Route 52, but that would be a big problem if it happened.
Yeah, I mean, he said that the older girls will be heading
Same with the
towards the
batting
parking
cages.
lot. Right, so, it would have to be considerations both ways, just so that there's got to be some type of protective.
Right. And the batting cages are enclosed, but the waiting area,
Sure.
if you're waiting for your turn or you're a parent watching your
Yeah.
kid, is not. So, and that kind of backs right up to the middle of field 2 and 3.
And then there's the driving range there too, so, people just kind of arbitrarily walk into their car and get clipped with a softball. I mean, there's got to be some kind of,
A semblance of order?
yeah, just a little bit.
Understood.
Do you know, Michael, I can do some research on this, but is this the existing dome, is it operating under a special permit for outdoor recreation developments?
That 10-acre bit?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think, okay. So this, it's already under a special permit that's operating, and in order to do the fields, that was added, I think, actually after the original special permit was granted, they added additional uses that could be included, I think in like 2016 or something like that. So that included the field uses, so we'd have to amend the special permit.
Yes.
And is that permit run out, or is it indefinite? How does that operate?
Generally speaking, it's indefinite as long as the use is still ongoing.
Yeah, so unless they stop using it that way for a period of time.
Then it could
It would
lapse.
continue, okay.
And that amendment is to be made by the planning board or the town board?
It's a planning board special
Planning
permit.
Okay, thank you.
And I think too, Michael, you should be in touch with Brendan and his team, just because obviously being off 52, I'm sure he's going to have some comments, and I'm sure the DOT is going to have some comments as well.
So you're not having any backstops, but there is a 30 spaces per backstop parking requirement in the special permit. So we'd have to look at that. Yeah, so why don't you give me that parking information, then you and I can do some calculations. There is also a section of the special permit that allows the planning board to grant relief from the parking requirements listed in the special permit. So I think we just need to get a better sense of that. Fencing, it is also a requirement of special permit. Active recreation facilities such as tennis courts, batting cages, whatever, shall be fenced in a manner sufficient to meet applicable standards. That's also subject and at the discretion of the planning board. And that's relative to location type, color, height, width, fencing. There's no lighting at all, right?
How many fields are inside the dome?
One. So if you see the dimensions of the dome right there, so they kind of catty-corner one corner, and none of it right field, left field, it doesn't meet the standards relative to even
Yeah,
smaller play.
it's not sized for a full-size field in there, no.
Right, so that's what they kind of use. And there's more training going on there than there is, ball games being played. It's just not, it just doesn't allow for that. If they want to do, tournaments, or scrimmage with other teams, then go to town here and rent out the fields. I mean, that's an option. I know the girls softball league doesn't particularly play during the summer, so, and I think they've done that before, so.
So as part of the special permit, there's also a community benefit requirement, which says the owner shall enter into a written agreement with the town regarding the use of the outdoor recreation development facility. The agreement shall specify the community benefits that shall be provided to the town residents for recreation, as well as potential large-scale assembly. I think that was talking about if it was a dome or indoor facility. But so if there's the opportunity to provide some community benefit with the field or use time for the community to use the field, that would be helpful to have proposed with for the next meeting.
So meaning that, like a community organization could rent that field?
Or our rec department could
Yeah.
utilize those fields.
See, then that would become a definitive problem, because then you're talking about men being on that field and cranking a softball on the 52 with zero safety, so.
Unless you could limit it
I was gonna say.
to youth programs or something, but we'd have to put those restrictions in the special
Sure.
permit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you would, youth baseball is,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there may be something there. I know that East Fishkill baseball is pumping, and they're always looking for fields, and, I know they've had, I think the last couple of years, they've had tournaments over here. So maybe there's something there where, in fact, and the boys do use those softball fields when they have those tournaments, so maybe there's something where we could, maybe something there. But again, I want to make sure this doesn't get too wacky, because if you don't have backstops, and you don't have protective fencing, and, in the dugouts and things like that, we don't want that to become that.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I don't think we're being unrealistic, but at the same token, I'm sure there have a cost factor involved to try to, be looking at a project like this, but to have zero safety in place, it's kind of like Wild West.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Question. Understanding, I heard fencing. Ambulance access into that area?
Yeah, well, I do know that obviously the access way cuts across, and then you take a left into the parking lot, so that access way would be a little along that length. And then with the parking lot being right up against field number 2, it would seem like you could get an ambulance up to the edge of the field there.
But I heard fencing going in. Is that happening, or?
I didn't say fencing, we're trying to...
No, we were talking about fencing having to exist, because they're proposing no fencing right now, so.
Yeah,
I think as long as we'd be able to drive into those
Access.
infields, right, yeah. I mean, just from a safety standpoint, my concern would be anybody, I think that anybody hitting from the top out, it looks like on these squares here, that's kind of the infield, the basic infield, and then that semicircle, or the quarter circle is your kind of outfield.
The outfield,
Yeah, anybody who can hit that, past that, I think should probably be scouted from Major League Baseball at this point, if they're young girls and they're clearing that. My concern is the line between the two lower fields. Anybody with their back to the lower one watching the middle one, or vice versa, is inclined to get hit in the back of the head with a stray
Yes.
foul ball.
I mean, maybe the solution, and again, I'm not committing to anything, is to provide for, just in front of where the girls would stand against them in the field, just a piece of fencing, 8-foot high or 6-foot high fencing.
Could be
just so
that
there's
for a
protection there,
backstop
you know?
too, because like he's saying, foul ball, people have their backs to what's going on behind them. So maybe it's not that they have to put a full fencing system around each field, that maybe there is some mitigation with what you said, safety for the players standing off, and then people like the foul balls with having a traditional backstop that goes over.
There must be, I mean, this is not, we're not inventing anything here, so there must be standard practice.
Best practices.
Fields. So I think we'll just do a little research on
Yeah,
that and
just a
figure out
little
what,
work beyond just having.
understanding that they're considered practice fields, but also understanding that these fields have a way of morphing into other uses, so we'll have to look at that.
Understood, and that's, you know, why we're here for a site plan, and we get enough information on it so it's controlled.
I mean, it's a lot on one. Would 2 work if they, or is that just not, it's not enough? Doesn't really fit your needs?
Again, I wish I could speak for the applicant, not being here, but that may be, it may not be. I think it was just a function of, we have this area to work in.
Right.
What can we get in this space?
Yeah.
You know, that would seem like the most sense.
And maybe from a safety standpoint, that could be the give and take, because you're really looking to quadruple what exists now. So let's say if that provided better safety with some measures still in place, like you said, we look at the best practices for this type of use, that maybe there's some middle ground with it.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other comments, we thank you.
All right, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the last item on the agenda is an item that's been referred to us by the town board, 90 Old Route 52, Stormville. And Michelle, do you want to take us through this?
Sure, I can quickly speak to this. So there was a request by an applicant to move into an existing building that's in the hamlet of Stormville. And the building in the past was used as first of all, it's zoned R1, so it's residential zoning. But in the past, it had been used as a gun range and also as a...
In the basement, there was a gun shop.
Yeah.
Range.
And I don't know how long ago that was, but then more recently, it was Tumbleweed Daycare. Some of the planning board members may remember that application. Having said that, daycare is a special permit use in a residential zone. So they were able to get that special permit use because it was a special permit, allowed by special permit. So they are requesting, the applicant has come to us, they are interested in using the building as an art gallery and storage location for Life Energy Art Center is what it's called. I sent an email around with some information about it. And basically, the planned usage would be primarily as a storage site housing the fine art painting collection of John Diamond, MD, which is nearly 45,000 individual works. Then they would set up a by-appointment art gallery and various museum library type rooms featuring his other works and collections, which may also serve on a limited basis as teaching and learning areas. Occasional events may be held either in the gallery or in one of those teaching spaces. One or more staff members may eventually work regularly from this building, although not for the foreseeable future. So there's no employees right now proposed. So their argument for requesting the zone change is that it would be a low-traffic, low-impact proposed use. The historic usage of the building was for commercial businesses. It would be close to B1 properties now. Pretty much surrounding it is residential zone properties, although if you go into Stormville Hamlet, because it's over the tracks from the center of the hamlet. If you go into Stormville, there are some commercially zoned buildings, but most of the properties on their side of the tracks are residential. In fact, all of them, I believe, are. So I think this particular use, while it is low impact, we would have to really consider, if we were going to consider making a recommendation to the town board, we'd have to consider what could be used in the future if it wasn't this use and we rezoned it to something. And there's multiple ways we could tell them, we could recommend to the town board that the applicant apply for a use variance. Might be hard for them to get that. We could recommend that they rezone it to an existing business district that we have here. We could recommend that we create a special permit for this type of use, and maybe there's some other properties in town that could also benefit from something like that, that would really restrict the uses that could occur on the property and could be considered sort of a transitional zone between residential and commercial, because we do have a few other properties that have, that are kind of in between. And I could look at that and see, but we need some feedback for the town board, because they have to consider whether or not to grant this type of rezone here.
So
Specifically, they're asking to go to some sort of commercial, but we don't have very many options commercial-wise, so the only commercial really they would probably go to is a B1, because that would make the most sense. It's similar to the other, but that might be too high an intensity use, in my opinion, because you could have a restaurant there, you could have a retail business there, and
There's residences on this side.
Exactly, and it's very residential. So I think a B1 is probably, in my opinion, not the correct rezone of this property.
But in your
Michelle-
professional, oh, I'm sorry, Lori.
Just really quick, the special use you can have in residential, in R1, daycare, I think there's like there's an accessory doctor office, right, or professional office. What are the other accessory uses or special permit uses?
Let's see.
Pretty much, I don't know that there's much more than that.
Just that?
Michelle's going to double check.
Yeah, I mean, what would have been the most ideal, to honestly, is historic structures, but I think they sort of, it may have been considered a historic structure at one point, but it wouldn't be anymore. It doesn't look like a historic structure
Right, they did
anymore.
the recent.
And I don't know that it's on the list, because then you actually can offer museums and galleries, and you can really restrict that use in that special permit and really condition that special permit. But maybe there'd be an opportunity to propose something to the town board that they consider for properties similar to this. I can tell you that, we do have a couple other properties that, not in this, near this one, but in other locations, so maybe there's a special permit we could come up with. I'd have to look at the properties around and kind of tell you which ones they are and which ones might work, but.
Isn't there a B1 across the street from there that's undeveloped right now?
Yeah, there is B1 zoning in the Stormville hamlet for sure, but not entirely, right? And there's, but on that,
are now?
well, on the side of the tracks that this building is located, it's all R1.
Do they own this building, or they're going to rent?
No, they are considering purchasing it.
Oh.
So, and then let me just tell you the other piece of it. So I did a little research on the Life Arts, and they
Yeah.
currently have a gallery in Mount Kisco. It seems like they're trying to phase out of the Mount Kisco gallery. They're right in downtown Mount Kisco. And it looks like, I was trying to tell from the road, they may actually be on the second floor of one of the buildings. It doesn't look like they get much traffic there, but again, I'm worried less about this use than I am about if you rezone
Open
it
it
to
up,
something.
or
What
they decide,
Right.
yeah.
I lean more towards the special permit than the
Sure,
rezone.
absolutely.
So I thought I saw something on their website too, where they do some reproductions with special inks and special paper and that kind of thing. Do they plan to do that at this
I
location?
don't know, they didn't mention that, so we can ask that question.
Okay.
We can ask that question.
And is this artist deceased?
I don't know.
Yes, I think he died in 2021.
Okay,
The website gives
Yeah.
his birth and
it's interesting,
death date.
because sometimes they're
was
look
a-
for their legacy to be
was a-
preserved.
Holistic doctor that was into acupuncture, but also the benefits of music and art and all that kind of thing,
Together.
according to the website.
Yeah, I agree with Lori, though, special permit with
I do too.
the covenants, because if we start going out to that B1, that could get really
So if you wouldn't mind thinking about it and then sending me any thoughts that you had about what, if there was a special permit, what type of uses you might allow other than art gallery or storage? Like, would you allow an architect's office? Would you allow, you probably don't want to allow medical because that's too
So like a
busy.
professional-
But a professional, like an architect or maybe a psychologist or something like that, you might be able to consider like, but not a whole medical group, right?
Yeah, with a limit to the capacity of it, because
And
if
the
you
number of
said.
employees and that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
If you go to a B1, could they then put a restaurant in there?
If it went to be one, they could, yes, that's why. they
Well,
want-
the other thing is that I was just, thinking about is the type of uses, the type of uses are going to be dependent on their water and sewer too. So, you're not going to get a medical office like building with 30 like employees. Because again, I don't know the site, for anything, but, you have to be careful. I sort of know that area. But, every, well and septic are going to like limit what's going to be going there. So, like an art studio or something like that's probably pretty low intensity as far as water and sewer.
Sure.
So you just got
As long as it's contained to certain things, because when you say art studio, it really could open up to welding. I mean, you could see like some of these, like Talix and some of these other art studios that turn into a whole nother thing. So I don't know how we also kind of limit that beyond a certain
Well, I think we
capacity.
really need to consider it as a transitional residential to very low impact commercial.
Yeah, sure.
Do we know how big
Something
the
like no
building?
manufacturing would be included. Something like no manufacturing, theoretically.
Sure.
Welding, could be
Yeah.
considered manufacturing.
Yeah, because, I mean, I know that this sounds wacky, but with some of this art, it could get into all different things, that could really kind of be construed as manufacturing. So,
So maybe it's just storage and gallery
Sure.
and no production.
yeah,
To me, I'd be looking at something to tie in with the rail trail right there and have some sort of stop that they could stop at, buy a drink or something.
Michelle, do you know how big a building it is, how many square feet they have there? Which is also a potential limitation, I guess, on use.
It's broken into a couple of pieces already.
I think he did actually say.
Hold up the listing. It lists it as 7,124 total square feet.
that's a big building. And it's got a basement, full basement.
It doesn't look like there's a basement from the...
I think there is.
There used to be a gun range
Yeah, there was a gun
basement.
range.
Okay.
Yeah, originally.
So basically, that's almost 14,000.
What property size, how big is the property, does it say?
7,000 with the
0.89
basement.
of an
It's a
acre.
little under an
Just 1
acre.
I mean, that's going to be tough with that size like building and trying to get water and sewer. I mean, it's a small lot.
And not a lot of parking.
Not a lot of parking.
Not a lot of parking, from what I recall.
There's people that use it for the rail trail now since the business closed.
Yeah, it's empty.
But yeah.
So, I mean, so if you
No
think
more.
of any businesses that you can think of or uses that would be, you'd want to propose to the town board as a recommendation, let me know, or any restrictions or anything like that, let me know.
What kind of a deadline would you like this?
They're trying to respond to him pretty quickly, so if you can get me something in the next couple weeks, I'll turn around, I'll write something up, send it to everybody, you guys can look at it, and we'll send it off.
Perfect, excellent.
So as this conversation moves forward, I will recuse myself as I have relatives that live adjacent.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just when it was a gun range, there is restrooms in there, because I shot there. And there is restrooms and the whole setup, and I think he had a small kitchen back there at one time, too.
In the basement or up?
No, upstairs.
In the
Upstairs.
main? So the gun range was in the basement?
In the basement.
And were there any other facilities besides that down there, like as far as?
When I shot there, it was strictly a gun range shooting up against the concrete wall,
Yeah,
which was excellent.
yeah. I mean, maybe that requires like some type of site visit to understand what exists there now. and-
That's a great idea.
That actually is a pretty good idea.
Sure.
No, he killed himself there.
Or people feel that it does, they can go there on their own, but,
Yeah, the applicant has not purchased the property. I think they're hoping to purchase it under contract. They want to make sure they can do what they, and I explained to them that currently, with the way it's zoned, they can't do what they're requesting to do, so then they went the step further to
Or
request.
maybe online, the listing shows all the pictures inside the building that we can just look at to try to make some determination.
There's
Pretty
37
good.
photos.
Okay, so maybe that's
Most of them are
suffice.
interior. It's a big open space.
But it would be a good idea also to get a sense of the neighborhood.
Sure, I'm going to take a ride over there, because I know that there is residential there.
It's
sure.
quiet.
Yeah.
Okay, any other business to be brought before the planning board tonight? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.